Hi, shalom friends. Do you know the key to knowledge? Now, if you answered the key to knowledge is curiosity or intelligence, of course you would be right. But I'm thinking the word key in terms of something tangible that we use to access. So you take a piece of metal, you put it into a lock, and you unlock and you're able to enter. Or even if it's buttons, you press buttons in a sequence and that unlocks something. So if we had to look at something tangible, something not so philosophical like curiosity, what would be the key to knowledge? And actually the answer would be language. And to be more particular, one letter, L-E-T-T-E-R. That is the key to knowledge. Now, what I'm going to share with you is primarily the Jewish alphabet called the Aleph Bet, and it is a Kabbalistic thought, but I'm going to expand it to use it for all language, like the ABC of the 26 letters, or even Chinese. There's actually in a dictionary of Chinese characters, there's over 100,000, but I read online that all you need is around 3,500 to actually read the newspaper. So let me demonstrate this with one of the remarkable women. She passed away in the 1960s, I think maybe 1967. Her name was Helen Keller. And when I was growing up, it was required reading her biography in 6th or 7th grade. And essentially, this is a girl who was very ill, and before she was 2 years old, she was deaf and blind. I cannot imagine what that means, because there's no access to the outside world. In those days, they would call her, she was mentally retarded. Today would say maybe mentally impaired or challenged. The reality is no one knew that there's a beautiful soul and a dynamic personality that was bursting, waiting to be expressed. But there was no language. Well, many of us that have pets, they don't really talk to you with the ABC, but very often through their body movements, you know when they want to eat, when they want to drink, when they want to go out, they wag their tails or look at you, and you know that they're expressing some form of thank you or gratitude. So this unfortunate child was blessed with wonderful parents and with a housekeeper, and by the age of 7, she was sort of able to communicate maybe 60 body languages, which told them when she's hungry, when she has to go out, and etc. She writes in her biography she was born when Anne Sullivan came. Anne Sullivan was someone who was visually impaired and had done remarkable work in opening up the world to the blind and to the deaf. So she came. And I'm just going to focus on one particular thing. How did Anne Sullivan communicate language to Helen Keller? So she writes, one hand was put under running water, and with the other hand, Anne Sullivan kept on doing finger movements. And this happened again and again. She would do the finger movement and then with the other hand put it under the water. And Helen Keller writes, something almost out of the mist came forth. I began to associate those finger movements with that cool liquid, which later on was called water. And that was a breakthrough. She was highly intelligent. And from that, she wanted to know, what is this and what is that? And Anne Sullivan would communicate. So a box of tissues or something to that effect, or a towel, she would repeat over and over with finger movements, and with the other hand, she would be holding a towel until Helen Keller began to understand that these finger movements mean this object. Eventually, she became an author and a lecturer and a political activist. What was her key? How did she interact with the outside? How did the outside know that this was not only a sensitive, beautiful soul, but highly intelligent? The answer is when she began to associate through a letter or letters a concept. Let's think about this for a moment. If I looked up, according to Amazon stats, the average amount of words on a page is perhaps anywhere between 250 and 300, depending on the font. Okay? You have 200 pages, times that. We're talking about an average book has probably 100,000 words. Now, what's the average word? Between 3 and 5 letters or characters. Could you imagine? You take a book, a scientific book, it has maybe not 200 pages, but 500 pages. And all of that wisdom, thousands of words and tens of thousands of words of letters, all come from 26 letters of the alphabet. Could you imagine? I mean, just think about it. In 26 letters of the alphabet, you have access to all the world's intelligence. I'll reiterate. I'm referring primarily to the Aleph, Bet, Gimel, the Jewish alphabet. But you could even see it in any language in the 26 letters of the alphabet. Okay, if these letters or characters convey knowledge, I'm going to give you a B. What do you know from a B? The answer is it's meaningless. Okay, I'll put the letter E far away. What does the letter E tell you? Nothing. And the letter D, nothing. Put it together. And then suddenly we have a word, a concept, an idea, bed. And we could expand that. The more letters we put together, but it can't be haphazard. It's not like Scrabble. It has to be in a sequence. The more letters we put together, the more capable we are of forming words and sentences and paragraphs and chapters and a book. What happens if in your book you're missing a chapter? Well, depending on how technical the book is, one thing's for sure, some information will be missing, like whether it be fiction or nonfiction. If it's missing 2 chapters, even more. How about if it's missing a line? Chances are you'll still get the story, but what happens if that line happens to have the name of the heroine? So you have no idea what's going on. Who's the heroine? Okay. Our sages of Kabbalah liken each letter of the Hebrew alphabet to the equivalent of a stone. Now, as we know, stones, some very large and some tiny, which are called pebbles. But a stone doesn't seem to have much of a personality. It does not really seem to have much purpose on its own. But if you put stones one upon another, you have a wall, and with enough stones, you could actually create a house. So let's imagine 10,000 stones put together creates a home for one person. Isn't that amazing? One person, and yet all of these stones on their own don't have much meaning. Putting them together, they create shelter. They create an abode for one person. The Kabbalists go further. They explain we have one God, one Creator. This eternal one God Creator spoke. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Those words are composed of that sentence, "Let there be light," and there was light. That sentence has words. Those words have letters. Each letter conveys a godly energy. So scattered godly energy is not the same thing as seeing a cohesive oneness. Just like scattered letters on a board or on a table are meaningless until you actually put it together as a word. In many ways, the goal of humanity is to make a beautiful page of written words, to take all of these scattered energies, put it together. Now, again, it needs much more time, but if we wanted to really simplify something, but United States of America, millions of people, what unites us? Well, let's make believe the Constitution, one Constitution, or perhaps one boundary. We have boundaries from the east, the west, the north, and the south. So whether you're from Wisconsin that has, I think, 6 million people, California, 40-odd million people, Utah, 3 million people, we are all under the same oneness. And that's what makes us a nation. Every United States of America has a state. Everyone from Wisconsin is in this state. Everyone in Wisconsin probably lives in a city. A city is one. There's one area delineated by, I guess, boundaries, and now you're in this city. And then you're in one neighborhood, one community. And then you're in one family, until eventually you get to one. Now, I want to ask you something. Let's make believe you're looking at yourself, and you would say honestly, you would say, you know, I consider honesty a virtue. It's something that I act. I'm an honest person. And I ask you, are you honest in business? You say, oh yeah. Are you honest with your friends? Oh, certainly. Are you honest with your family? Yeah, of course. With your spouse? Come on. How about, are you honest with yourself? Now, obviously, we could micro-analyze each one of those statements. But clearly, if you're honest, you want that honesty to be one. So if you're honest in business, but your friends know that you tell tall tales and they cannot really trust you because they're never sure if you're joking or not joking or telling the truth or not telling the truth, you're not a very honest person at all. And heaven forbid if you actually hide the secret life of you from your family, you're not being honest. In truth, you might not be honest to yourself. You might put yourself down, you might exaggerate your importance, whatever. So our goal of honesty would be to be one with honesty. Let's take another one. Kindness, generosity. To whom? To the outside? To your neighborhood? To your family? To yourself? If there's ever a break that I'm nice, I'm generous, I'm compassionate to my neighbor, but I'm an ogre, I'm a monster to my own, you're not nice at all. You're not consistent. So our job in life is actually to get to oneness. Well, let's extend this, obviously, to our spiritual life. If we're going to the synagogue or we fast on the Day of Atonement or occasionally write a big check to the UJA or something like that, but every other part of our day and our life is not associated with who we truly want to be, which is one with God, then we're splintered. We have to integrate. We don't need a letter and a letter and a letter, a stone and a stone. We want a word. And the more we're able to unify, the more coherent the paper, the more coherent the idea, the more coherent our own life is. Much of our confusion is based on the idea that we're splintered. There's the way we are on the outside, in contrast to the inside, in contrast to the synagogue, in contrast to vacation. There has to be that oneness. Torah mitzvahs propels us to that oneness that we all seek and desire. It'll come a time, my friends, when everyone who's separate will begin to identify with a true oneness. No, we don't all live in the same neighborhood. We don't all have the same community. We don't all live in the same country or speak the same language. But we are all God's creation, every human being in the image of God. That oneness that really unites each and every one of us and gives us the dignity of being human is being revealed today, each and every one of us in our own particular path of spirituality, and again being led through the teachings of the Torah. We are expecting and anticipating that when the Mashiach will come, this true oneness that actually bonds all human beings together and brings a oneness in all of God's magnificent creatures will be revealed. Those days are happening soon with the coming of Mashiach. Can it be today? Yes. Let's make it happen.